Welcome, clinicians. Today's topic is going to be on how to apply Gestaltian principles in your counseling work. Now, everybody kind of has this idea about Gestaltian therapy that's all about this empty chair idea. However, the way that I apply it is through understanding what Gestalt psychology actually is and utilizing it in a way and understanding people's thinking process. Let's first begin by understanding what Gestalt is. Now, in German, Gestalt actually means the whole of something is greater than the sum of its parts, which is pretty cool. Because when you think about your clients and when they're discussing their worries and their thoughts, a lot of things you're going to notice are a lot of conjectures. There's also going to be a lot of voids that you're going to notice as well in their worries. I mean, think about it. Have you ever noticed your mind kind of automatically filling in the blanks when you start to worry about something or you don't know what's happening? For an example, waiting for medical tests. Somebody hasn't replied to your text message, so you start to try to fill in the blanks as to what's going on. Uncertainty about your future. Wondering whether you made a right decision in an event or an experience that you just had. A lot of these things are natural worrying thoughts that a lot of your clients are going to be presenting to you. And a lot of times what I find myself doing is thinking about the Gestaltian principles of the whole of something is greater than the sum of its parts. It is important to understand that our brains don't like uncertainty. When information is missing in our minds, our thoughts start to create these stories to fill in those blanks. It's not a bad thing with this sort of principle because sometimes those stories that we create actually protect us. But a lot of times for the clients that you work with, it may actually worsen their anxieties. And this is where you're going to try to understand how to help clients fill in those voids. Now, usually when it comes to Gestaltian principles, Gestalt is about illusions, about how our brain identifies things within our environments. A lot of times our sensory information likes to figure things out with the most comfortability, as much comfort as possible. And when that happens, it's very interesting with a lot of people. It's like their brain wants to close something to make it make sense. And let's just face it, we all find comfort in things that are sensible, things that are closed, things that provide us with closure. Even if you think about relationships, for example, people have the most distress when dealing with breakups that don't have any closure, that where somebody just leaves the individual without them understanding why they left. So that means when you're working with a client, you kind of have to explain that bridge. A way that I try to help a client understand these voids in their thinking and how it's causing them distress is I'll use a sort of sensory image. I'll use something called a Canesa triangle. A Canesa triangle is something that's very well known in Gestalt psychology. It's basically an image that looks like this. And basically within this image, if you look at it, I'm just going to ask you guys, and you could tell your clients the same exact thing. What do you see in this image? Well, if you said you see a triangle, the reality is there's no triangle in this image. As a matter of fact, the reason why you're seeing a triangle is because your brain finds comfort in something called closure, which is a very well-known Gestalt principle. And in the counseling room, what you're going to want to try to help your clients establish is a sense of closure. And closure can mean many different things, depending on the subject at hand. A lot of times what I notice is that a lot of people come in talking about death and their anxieties and fears about death. Now, that is the ultimate challenge for a counselor like yourself to figure out how to find closure in a person's death anxiety. It really goes into what they believe. For example, someone might believe that after I die, I may go to heaven or I may go to hell. That is a religious belief. That's totally fine. They have a sense of closure. Now, I won't lie, but a lot of problems come when I work with atheists who don't really feel like there's anything after life or anything really exists. It's just once you're dead, you're dead. And hey, they may be right, who knows? But the reality is that that causes more distress to not know. That is a stronger void than the religious person's thought process and belief. And so, even within the idea that after death nothing comes, that in a way could be closure itself. And I know it sounds crazy, but to understand that, to tell a client something like, well, I see that you think that after death, nothing happens. But that is your belief. And that could be a sense of closure in this thought process that's causing you distress. Just to ultimately tell yourself, you know what? After I pass away, that's it. There's nothing left, right? That's something that can help a client sort of understand that there's that closure aspect. That's what you truly believe. It may help some clients, it may not help others, but this is the Gestaltian approach in some ways to utilize this, right? So there's that. I want to sort of share some other examples. So basically, from perception to anxiety, right? When life feels incomplete, it can lead to feelings such as uncertainty, a lack of answers. It could lead to unfinished conversations, unresolved grief, waiting, etc. Our mind tries to complete the picture. Unfortunately, it often ends up with missing pieces. And these missing pieces tend to turn into things like the worst case scenario, catastrophizing, self blame, assumptions. These are things that we have to help our clients identify that what they're doing and try to help them reframe that. Now, this is where cognitive behavioral therapy and Gestalt principles can go hand in hand with one another. For example, if I have a client who says that their boss called them to meet with them this weekend or something like that, that person's brain is probably telling them, oh, I'm getting fired, or this is not good. This is going to be the worst news I'm going to get in my life. But the reality is, nothing has happened yet. So it's important to understand when applying Gestalt principles to explain to our clients that the anxiety comes less from reality, but more so from the stories that they are filling into these voids in their own head. Therefore, this kind of becomes a little bit more of a reality based approach to some degree to tell your client that, I hear your worry and it's definitely understandable, but it's the thoughts that you're using that are filling in these blanks that are causing you a lot more distress. So, if we understand the Gestaltian principles of closure, what other stories can you tell yourself that are probably more positive? And that goes into the whole idea of optimism and pessimistic thinking. And that's a whole other subject we'll touch on at some point. You might say to a client in some way that our distress is often less about the unknown, but more about the frightening meaning that we attach to it. So when I'm navigating these things with my clients in terms of the Gestalt principles, I try to help them become more grounded, more present in the moment by trying to acknowledge and be more self aware of those thought processes about the unknown and how they're filling in those voids. And it's like I said, it's kind of resembled to applying cognitive behavioral therapy and those type of techniques by reframing what they're thinking. But in a way, you're adding in that context of what anxiety actually is from that Gestaltian perspective. Remember, the whole of something is going to be greater than the sum of its parts, meaning that whatever frightening meaning that they're attaching to those voids within their own mind is what's making the picture whole and uncomfortable. That's where you kind of want to teach your clients how to be more mindful of the of the stories that they're telling themselves and the voids that they're trying to fill, and at the same time trying to help them understand, trying to be more grounded in reality and things like that, and understanding that it's their mind, it's their brain kind of taking them away into these thoughts and into these voids, and that's what's causing the distress. A lot of times it's very subjective to every individual, so understanding these gestalt principles and having a general awareness of it can be helpful for you as a clinician to utilize with your clients to psychoeducate them and help them understand how their thoughts are developing voids, and how their brain is trying to fill in these voids that they're thinking about. Not every void needs immediate closure. I don't know is perfectly fine. Sometimes a little bit of acceptance about the unknown is okay. It's to understand that A lot of things in our life are going to be left to the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But if I constantly worry about it and I try to fill in those voids with unnecessary or frightening stories, I'm just going to keep causing myself distress. So, once again, when it comes to finding a balance within it, it's not about completely ridding your clients of those voids in their experiences or their thought process, but it's also understanding them and being okay with those voids in some cases. At the end of the day, it really all depends on the person. So basically, just to end this all, it's important to understand that Gestalt teaches us that our minds seek completeness. And that's one of the most remarkable ways we make sense of our world. But when life leaves gaps, that can also lead to fear and anxiety and worry. And as clinicians, we should be able to help our clients identify those gaps and create more meaningful stories around them. And meaningful stories, I believe personally, can be both positive or negative. Depending on the individual. Some people love challenges. Some people like to think, oh, like tomorrow when I go play this soccer game and that good soccer player is on the court, and he's intimidating. Yeah, it's a little scary, and he might be bigger than me and might overpower me, whatever the case is. But you know what? I'm still gonna try my hardest no matter what. You're being realistic, and I think that's the most important balance that you can kind of help your clients navigate in a way of understanding their life circumstances. So Gestalt really teaches us that our minds naturally seek completeness, but when our thoughts leave gaps, that can be frightening and scary, and it could cause anxiety within the clients that we work with. So, just another point I want to make is that not all anxieties are about voids or incompleteness or closure or imagined stories. Anxiety could be manifested from other things like trauma, experiences, things that we have to face. But all in all, in some regards, it does seem like a lot of our thoughts that we worry about the most are the ones that are don't give us closure and the ones that are made up in our own minds. Yes, the world in reality is a scary place, but if you just create the more meaningful stories and the more positive thoughts and thinking, you can definitely replace those negative ones into those voids. That's it. That's all I wanted you guys to understand in today's topic. I hope it was helpful. I hope that this is something that you can apply with your clients and help them understand how their mind kind of seeks completeness and the stories that they tell themselves can be negative and make them more distressed. Thank you for coming today. Take care.